Hi, I'm Frank and welcome to my woodturning channel. This week I'm going to do part 2 of a video that I did a little while ago. I was turning a Tamarack Burl and I cored it out, and I've had it sitting in the kiln now for maybe 2 months, and it's now dry and ready to go. So let's see how it made out. Looks like it's in pretty good condition, no visible cracks. Oh, maybe a very little crack right here, but that's okay, I can work with that. Same thing for the small one. Oh, some of the oils and resins have popped out on that one. Yeah, now this is the large piece that I really want to make sure I salvage. There's a few little cracks up here, but overall it doesn't look too bad actually. There's a big depression here which I might have to put some epoxy into. Other than that, it looks pretty good. So we're going to turn all 3 of these pieces and see how they look. One of the first things I have to do is to true up the tenon on all of these pieces. So I'm just going to use this jam chuck, and here I'm just truing up the tenon using a bowl gouge, and then I will square it up with a parting tool, or sometimes I use in this case I've used a spindle gouge to get it nice and squared up. And I'm just going to true up the outside surface or the bottom of the bowl. Again, just using my 1/2-inch bowl gouge. And what I'm noticing is there's lots of pitch or resin in this Tamarack. It's really greasy. Yeah, I'm not sure how it's going to, it's cutting well, so I'm trying to get as good of a surface as I can, but it's a very gummy. So I'm going to probably have to do something for that issue. Here you can see some of those resin areas that have a bit of pitch in them. Now with this larger piece, I'm just doing exactly the same thing. I just happen to be using a larger jam chuck. I'm trying to get the best finish I can just off the tool, just because I know I'm not going to be able to sand with all of that pitch and resin on the outer surface. So it's cutting not too badly. I just have to keep the tools really sharp and really make sure I get a clean cut without tear out. This transition area is always a bit tricky to cut, so I've tried a little bit of pull cut, see if that works, and a little bit of push cut. Well, the pull cut isn't working that well, so it's going to have to be a nice slow push cut through the area. Yeah, that's giving me a better finish. It's just have to be really careful to make a clean cut through there. Now I'm going to try coming in from the end and see what that does. I'm surprised it left a fairly decent finish, so I can probably work with that. With this Tamarack being so soft, I really can't use my negative rake scraper. It just creates tear out. So I'm trying to do all the cuts just using a sharp gouge. The large piece has quite a bit of a crevice in it, so initially I'm going to stabilize the crevice and with some CA glue on both sides and get that all sealed up and hardened up. And then I'm going to tape the inside of it a couple of times and put some epoxy on the other side. I'm just afraid that if I don't do that, I may have a hole through the piece because I don't have a lot of wood to work with there. So I'm just mixing up some 30-minute epoxy and putting a bit of black dye in it. So now I'm going to start to work on the inside of all of these bowls. And again, I'm just using a 1/2 inch bowl gouge and trying to get as clean of a cut as I can. To finish off this bottom area, I'm just going to use this bottoming bowl gouge. This is a Hamlet tool in the Glenn Lucas series of tools. And I really like it to clean off these flat bottom areas. It does a really nice job. And now for this large piece, which is almost 24-inch in diameter, just barely goes over the bedways. And you'll see I have tailstock support. With a piece this big, I don't want to just rely on the chuck to hold it. It's got a lot of weight and it's not concentric and all of that. so it's not as well balanced as it could be. So I like to have the tailstock support there just for extra safety until it's in the way, and I can then remove it when most of the other material's gone. A few cracks on the surface here I'm just going to fill in with some wood dust and CA glue. There's some recessed live edge pieces on the outside of this, so I just want to make sure I got enough thickness in those areas where I don't go right through the wall of the vessel or the wall of the bowl. I want to make sure that the inside is as solid as I can make it. Now I'm cutting into the area where the epoxy is, and there's a little bit of it that's come through, so it tends to dull the tool very quickly. So I can make a few cuts, and then I have to just use a different tool, as you can see here. Now I'm just going to finish the bottom off again with that bottoming bowl gouge. Here it is again. It's a bit of a tricky tool to use, but once you've got the hang of it, it does a pretty nice job on the bottom surface. And you can see I'm using a curved tool rest to get in really deep in this large deep vessel. The straight tool rest just wasn't long enough for me to get in there. I did have to resort to using this negative rake scraper just in this bottom area where I kept getting some grooves and things because of the epoxy wood sort of interface. So I think that's good enough. Now the pitch and resin areas were so gummy that I just could not sand it right away. So I actually left these pieces sit for about 3 weeks, and the pitch and resin actually hardened up a bit. So after 3 weeks or so, then I started the sanding process. Here I'm just hitting the high areas where there's a lot of lines. And then I'm just using the traditional sanding pad on the inside here. But what I found is it really gummed up very, very quickly. So I could do a few passes like you see there, and then I had to take a little brass brush and take all the little bits of pitch and resin off of the sanding pad. So I had a lot of difficulty in sanding up these pieces. It just was very, very time consuming and used a lot of sandpaper. So here I'm just using a jam chuck again now to clean up the bottom. And I'm going to take this tenon off, get it sanded up. Once I've gone as far as I can on the lathe, then on the bench I'm just going to remove the little nub in the center here with a Kutzall burr. These work really well to quickly get that little high spot off of there. Now the large burl looked really well with all of the live edge pieces on it. But these smaller pieces, they looked very plain, so I thought for these smaller pieces I was just going to try to dye them and see how that would look. So here I've started with a bit of a red burgundy, purpley type color, just as the base coat. And when it dried, I really didn't like the look of it. So actually I went over it with blue. And now it looked much better. So the inside area I left a little bit pink and purpley, and the outside area, like you can see here, I'm trying to make a little darker blue. And the end result actually didn't look too bad. So I'm going to finish all of these pieces off with salad bowl finish. You can see it here, made by General. And this has a few coats on it already, so I'm just doing a little bit of light sanding with 400 grit. Just to remove any nubs and wipe it all out, and then I'm going to just apply the finish, basically wipe it on and then wipe it off. Stay tuned for some images and photographs of the finished pieces. Thanks again for watching.